Welcome to year 2 of the Funding Love podcast. I'm Mallory Elrod.
And I'm Caitlin Duckworth. We are two adoptive moms that seek to love, support, and elevate all corners of the adoption triad, including adoptive families, adoptees, and birth parents.
We do that through honest conversation with both expert and everyday voices about all things adoption and more, all while running our nonprofit, Funding Love.
We create post-adoption experiences that strengthen bonds, build community, and restore people.
We are Funding Love,
the podcast. Hey guys, it's Kate here. We are in November. Whoa. I know y'all feel it too, but I just gotta say it. Where in the world has this year gone? It has seriously flown by. But November is an important month in the adoption community, as it is National Adoption Month. On today's episode, we chat with our guest about what this month means to her and all of the feelings that come with this month. Our guest today is our sweet friend, Shonda Larson. Shonda is so special to us, and we are so thrilled that y'all get to meet her too today. Shonda traveled with us on our most recent Funding Love Birth Mom vacation. Not only is Shonda a birth mom, but she's also an adoptee. Today, she shares with us pieces of her story, and for that, we are so grateful. She brings such a unique and important perspective to the adoption community and to our conversation. I just know y'all are going to love her. Take a listen. Welcome, Shonda, to the Funding Love podcast. We are so glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here too.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're so glad to see your smiling face. It's been too long since we've seen you. And, just to let our listeners know, again, Shonda is a Funding Love alumni. She just traveled with us on our most recent Birth Mom vacation. So for Mal and I, it is so much fun to be sitting on this Zoom call looking at her beautiful face and about to have this conversation. So we're so thrilled you joined us.
Me too. I feel like it was just yesterday we were on the trip, but at the same time, it's like already been a month, which is so crazy.
It is.
I know. It is crazy. I'm getting like little memories. Like a lot of the women are posting like some memories. Like 1 month ago, we were here. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
I know. It was a special trip.
just hung up our pictures that you sent on my fridge, so I see them every day.
That's so good.
So awesome. So listen, we're so excited about this episode because we spoke with you while we were on that Birth Mom vacation. We learned a lot about you, and you just have such a unique and important perspective, we feel like, in this adoption community. And so we were just so thrilled that you're with us. But tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you're connected to the adoption community.
Yeah. So I was adopted. I lived in foster care until I was almost age 4. And then got adopted by my parents. I lived in foster care with my brother. I'm one of 4 siblings, and we all have pretty unique stories regarding our family and adoption. My oldest sister was never adopted. She was raised by our biological family. And then my second oldest sister was a planned infant adoption. And then my brother and I ended up getting put into the state's custody and went into foster care. And he's 3 years older than me. So we lived in foster care together. And then, as everybody probably knows, adoption's messy. And we ended up getting adopted by different families. And so, that's my little bit of story of being in foster care and being an adoptee. And then fast forward 20 years later, I find myself with an unplanned pregnancy and decided to do a adoption plan for my son. And so I placed him when I was 21, and he's 9.5. He's going to be 10 in April. And we have such an awesome relationship. It's super open adoption and just taking it day by day.
I love that. Do you guys live near each other, you and your son?
We do, yeah. We live in the same town.
Great.
We're like 15 minutes apart, which is super cool.
Wow.
Oh gosh, that's amazing.
That is awesome. That makes things much easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I made the adoption plan for him, that was one of my little stipulations. I said, I want to live in the same town because I want to be able to have easy access to have visits and stuff.
Right.
So
yeah.
It worked out perfect.
Well, good.
Yeah. Super important. I am curious, as an adoptee, do you have a relationship with your biological siblings still?
Yeah, so that's actually really
Amazing.
the relationships that I fought the most for in my adoption story. I've had kind of a complicated relationship of trying to meet up with my biological mom and dad. But I've always made it a priority to have relationships with my biological siblings. So I do know all of my siblings. I'm the only sibling who has met all of them. We're slowly working on all of us getting together, which would be a super awesome idea. And
To have a big old reunion, that'd be so cool.
yeah, so
Hey, in due time,
Yes.
that will be. Well, thank you for sharing that. Not, that's, I'm sure, not something that is easy to talk about, in parts of your story that I'm sure bring you joy, but some that I'm sure just kind of bring up some of those feelings. So we're so grateful, and thank you for sharing. November is National Adoption Month, and we're an adoption podcast. Funding Love is an adoption nonprofit, so we really do like to also bring awareness to that month. But this month, I feel like Mallory and I have talked about this, has taken on like a broader meaning over the years. I feel like, posts that you see, it's just kind of general adoption awareness, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to bring awareness just to the adoption community. So I feel that I've seen it take on like bringing awareness to adoption advocates, adoption professionals, adoptive parents, adoptees. But really, like, if you look at the history of this month, it's a bit more of a focus. And so, like, I pulled something from childwelfare.gov just because I wanted to kind of say it the right way. But National Adoption Month, which is November, it's an initiative of the Children's Bureau that seeks to increase national awareness of adoption issues, but to bring attention to the need for adoptive families for teens in the U.S. foster care system, and to emphasize the value of youth engagement. It started as like an adoption week back in 1984 by President Reagan. President Clinton then proclaimed it the first National Adoption Month in 95. And then in recent years, we focused our efforts on adoption for teens because we know teens in foster care wait longer for permanency and are at higher risk of aging out of than younger children are. Which is a great, I think that's such a great month, and it's a great initiative, and it's a great awareness. I'm just curious from your perspective, since you kind of, you do have, like we're saying, a unique perspective. What is your take on this month?
Yeah.
Your honest feelings. Cause I feel like just from my side, it could be one of those, months that can sometimes like show the saviorism and the hero card for the adoptive families. And so I'm curious from your perspective and your honest feelings when this month arises, like how you feel.
Yeah. I definitely think I have a different perspective from my adoptee side and from my birth mom side. I will be honest, I didn't even know like the focus of this month was really foster care until just a couple years ago. I definitely think that I have seen it more as like a broad, awareness of adoption, like you said. But I definitely love the idea that it is supposed to be about foster care just because there's so much need in that, like you said. But I have mixed feelings. So I have shared very openly, like over my social media the last few years over National Adoption Month, but I've taken it more from like my perspective of being a birth mom, just because, like you said, we find so much of that like savior mentality from adoptive parents that isn't like, I don't think is from a bad place at all. It's just like there's so much stigma and so much lack of education surrounding adoption.
Yeah, ignorance, right? It's just these ignorant posts.
I think I've seen a really good shift in the last few years where it's like I've seen adoptive families being like, nope, we're going to take this time this month to read all of these posts and learn. I've seen way more voices from adoptees. I've seen way more voices from birth moms just sharing their perspectives over the month, which I think is really awesome. And I think those two of the triad kind of have a lesser voice when it comes to a lot of stuff. I definitely think that from my adoptee perspective, it's been hard to like listen to different perspectives just because my adoption story is so different from like where I am as a birth mom. So
Right.
Yeah.
it's definitely like a toss up. But I think overall, I think we've done really awesome things with National Adoption Month and bringing awareness and having voices that need to be heard, and have people learn so much to get over some of that ignorance and that stigma and misinformation surrounding adoption.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So are you, I guess when this month comes in, are you grateful for it? Or is it something that you kind of are like, ugh, like,
Yeah.
not because of what it really means, because we know that awareness of foster youth is so important, but like just for you and your heart. I mean, I feel like, I don't know if I'm putting myself in your shoes or anybody's shoes that is the other perspective, I would be like, oh, here we go. Like, kind of having that feeling of like, oh gosh, all of these posts. Are you grateful for it?
I think if you would have asked me a couple years ago, I did not enjoy all of the posts. But like I said, I've seen that shift in the last few years, and I feel super grateful about it. And I think it truly is taking on the meaning of actual education. Now, if we could further more into the foster care, would be awesome. I mean, I don't know what it is everywhere else, but I know Montana is in severe, severe need of foster homes for all of these kids. And so that would be awesome to see that shift, be a priority over the month. But I think we've done really awesome things with National Adoption Month to, I don't know, just spread awareness and spread education.
I agree. I feel like over the years too, it's almost like year by year, my feelings kind of differ on it as well. And looking back just 8 years ago, when I had first joined the adoption community very ignorantly, like admittedly very ignorantly, even my perspective on National Adoption Month versus my perspective now has changed so much from all of the things that I have learned. And I think leaning into and listening to birth mom voices and adoptee voices plays a huge role in that. And I think that more people, this is going to be aired during National Adoption Month. I hope that anybody listening will kind of seek out those voices. Like if your Instagram feeds or your Facebook feeds are full of only adoptive families telling you, their side of adoption, I encourage you to go and seek out other voices to hear their sides as well. But I do also love and hope that we can also pull National Adoption Month back into the area of foster to adopt. And the fact that although foster care is focused on family reunification, there are so many kids and those that are older, especially that like those rights have already been terminated and they're literally just waiting on a family to like for permanent placement. And to bring awareness to all of the kids who do need that permanent placement, I think that we genuinely need that focus.
I totally agree. I mean, like you said, it's in this world of social media, it's nice to have like an adoption month, but the reality of it is like adoption's an everyday thing for people who are in it. So like, I know we highlight it for National Adoption Month, but like adoption awareness and education and like everything should be an everyday thing. Like if you want to be in adoption, if you want to adopt, like, I mean, even me as a birth mom, like I'm 10 years post-placement and I am learning something new about adoption every single day. Like I've been an adoptee my whole life and I am still learning. So it's like always pushing that education and learning and everything about it. So
yes.
Yeah, no, and I think I mean that's so true. Is if you want to be if oh gosh, I just feel like if you are a prospective adoptive parent, and I mean, I don't know, I think back to myself, Matt, like you were saying, when you were new in the adoption community and you just brought Mason home and you're an adoptive mom and you're like, yay, you're feeling all these good feels and you love to be a part of the community. And then you look at yourself now, I'm like, I even think I'm mortified. It's like the way my mind was even just 4 years ago. And I know it was just ignorance, right? It was just ignorance. But what I'm saying is for those who want to be in this community, just talk to people who are already in it. Talk to birth moms, talk to adoptees, because I feel like every conversation that I have with a birth mom or with an adoptee or even with another adoptive parent, I learn so much. And because you get different perspectives, and that is really all that it is. You're getting more perspectives instead of just your one lane that you are naturally going to be in. So yeah, I mean, I think you're so right. You hit the nail on the head when you said you're still learning because you just got to have these conversations just like we're having now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like every year when Mal and I come home from the birth mom vacation, we're like, oh my gosh, our eyes are just opened up so much more because we meet a whole new group of women with all these new stories and all these new perspectives. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is what it's all about. And you just feel like, wow, this is what I wish the whole world could experience.
Yeah,
totally.
It's so
Yes.
true. It's
Yeah.
so true. I wish everybody
Yeah.
could be just like a fly on the wall at some point.
Yes.
Yes.
Be part of that bubble that, like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. So we had this conversation with you, Mal and I did when we were on the vacation. But I wanted to bring this conversation up again because I think it's important to talk about because we don't often get adult adoptees on this podcast. We wish we had more and we do want more. So if you're an adult adoptee, please reach out. We would love to talk with you. But anyways, as an adoptee, do you feel like, because community is a big part of what we do at Funding Love, we believe building community is so important. So do you feel like you found community as an adult, as an adoptee?
Short story, no, but yes, kind of.
Okay.
Sure.
I definitely think that, I mean, most of my community that I have built around my life and being in the adoption community has been centered around being a birth mom.
Right.
Okay.
I definitely think that I would love to have more community as an adoptee. That would be an amazing thing. But it's also a hard community to break into. I mean, everybody who's in the adoption community has such a perspective, like a different perspective. Like we're all have unique stories and different life experiences that led us to becoming part of an adoption community. But with adoptees, I mean, we all have such different feelings and emotions surrounding adoption that I think it's hard to sometimes build that community because, I mean, there's adoptees that are super angry. There's adoptees that are super grateful. There's adoptees that feel all the things, you know, like,
Yes.
and like with the birth mom community, I mean, we all still have very unique perspectives, but there's that central theme of like, we've all been through the same, like placing a baby for adoption or babies or, and that's the central theme, not the feelings surrounding it. And I think being an adoptee, we all have such strong feelings that we get wrapped up in that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I do have friends who are adoptees, but overall, when I look at it, the bigger part of my community is not adoptee centered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's something you want, you desire, you long for?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely think that it would have made my life growing up a lot easier surrounding my adoption. I mean, I'm coming from a place that I am very thankful and very grateful for my adoption story, but there's definitely aspects of my adoption story that are super hard and I still am dealing with and realizing how I'm truly feeling about them as an adult. And if I had more people growing up or even now as an adult to relate to those feelings, I think it would make a huge difference in my life.
Yeah. So growing up, did you know many other adoptees? Like, were there children around you that were also adoptees or not really?
So I have two cousins that are actually adoptees, but they are adopted from Korea. And so
Okay. Very
completely
different stories and yes.
stories of adoption. So obviously I've got the whole foster care perspective and then add the complicated like sibling. I had my brother, I didn't, like that kind of stuff. So no, not really. I didn't really have anybody else besides my cousins who were adopted.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were talking about this on a previous episode, Kate and I, about how my son one day just like walked up to me and was like asking which of his friends, like, so are they adopted? And I was like, no, they're from their mom's, tummy. Okay, what about this one? Were they adopted? And I kind of got down to it and I was like, are you just wondering? Like, and so we went through and, he has like, I don't know, 5 or 6 friends that are also adoptees, but I was like, it was weird that he came up and like asked me that and like processed that with me. So do you feel like there was like a point in your journey, like growing up, that you feel like you could have used that community the most? Or like has adulthood been really when you've realized like, oh, that would have been nice to have community?
I think I can't remember like a time specifically or something that stood out specifically growing up. I mean, I always knew that I was adopted. My parents were wonderful with like, handling all the adoption stuff growing up and everything. Like, it was never something weird growing up. Like, I remember vividly actually that I would tell people when I was little that I was adopted, and everybody, I kind of look like my parents. And so people would be like, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." So, I think definitely came up more as an adult, being like, "Oh, that would have been nice to have more connections growing up," and definitely more connections now as an adult, just because I've dove more into those feelings of being an adoptee now that I'm an adult and I got to handle all my stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, young adulthood to me would feel like, now I'm just speaking of, I'm being hypothetical. I'm kind of just throwing this idea out there. Like, I don't know. I feel like a young adulthood would be a hard time as somebody. That's when we all in life just are figuring out, who are we? Where do we fit in? Where am I going to go in life? What do I want to be a part of? Like, who am I? Where am I from? Like, all of those things kind of just come up in your head. I feel like, I don't know, anywhere from like 17 to 22, 23. So I feel like, is that, just going to ask you, did you feel like at that point that is where you're like, gosh, if I could just have more people to talk to, if I could have more adoptees to process this with, that would feel good?
yeah, I definitely think you nailed it. Like 17 on, those early adult years were definitely a turning point. I mean, like you said, you're just finding yourself as your own identity, but then add on the identity that you're an adoptee as well. Was definitely, those two worlds collided for sure. And then, I mean, add my own life experience of, unexpectedly getting pregnant at 20 and then placing a baby at 21. I really had to like face head on those feelings of like, oh wait, like I've got all this stuff like from my own adoption story to process. And so I know that is definitely like the pinnacle of the point where I was like, oh gosh, I could use people who are in this kind of same position as me.
Community is so important. I mean, Mal, your cute little story of Mason is so true, because just yesterday this happened with my daughter Libby. Is she wanted to watch, she had never seen Tarzan, so the Disney movie, and I was like, oh, Tarzan, what's that about? I was like, well, it's this group of gorillas, they adopt Tarzan. She goes, oh, just like me. I said, yeah. She goes, oh, like Princess Leia too. I said, yep, like Princess Leia, and like Mason too. She's like, there's so many of us. Like, that's what she said. And I was like, oh, that is so sweet. Like, she grouped, she just grouped them with that commonality. And so that little community, even just in her little mind, is just so important.
I think it's just natural. I think it's just our human nature to be drawn to people that are like us, whether that's, exactly in any aspect of life. I think it's just normal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So as a birth mom then, because I know you've been speaking that you have community in that part of your life. So tell me, what has community meant to you as a birth mom?
I mean, basically summed up everything. I mean, like I have been talking about, I didn't really have like people to turn to when I was younger, being an adoptee. And so there's just, all of our life is built on human connection in some form. I mean, from friendships to relationships to like coworkers, just anything. I mean, when you boil it down, you have a relationship with every person that you interact with. And you want to find connection with those people. And I mean, a central theme of life is feeling like you're not alone, like somebody, understands you. And being a birth mom and finding that community of knowing people that have gone through the same life experiences. Like, I mean, take our last birth mom trip. Like, you walk into a room with complete strangers and like words are exchanged without even saying words. Like, we're all here, we've all been through this life event, and we're instantly going to be family and friends for the rest of our lives. And that is just so reassuring to know that there are people who know who you've been and take you as you are and love you where you're at.
Yeah. I just think about the feeling, and this was something that I wanted for Funding Love with these birth mom vacations, was for you guys to walk into that room and come completely as you are, like in full honesty. Like, it's not something that you have to reveal, it's not something you have to, like, everybody already knows, like the elephant's already been talked about, and so it's like, you can just walk in and be truly who you are, like walls down, because it's just already out there. Like, did you actually feel that? Like, is that what it's like when you get into a room, and not just with Funding Love, because I know you've interacted in other ways with birth mom groups and stuff like that, but is that like a feeling that you get, like just that, like disarmed, like we already know, it's not like that the elephant in the room or whatever, like, is it that feeling?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely like an unspoken connection already. But I mean, that's also, not to like talk about Funding Love the whole time, but like, I've been to other retreats and other birth mom groups and everything where it's like that connection is there without even having to start talking about it. But like a lot of other connections and birth mom groups and trips and stuff I've been on, it's like centered around the fact that we're birth moms and we want to like share our story and talk about it and whatever, which is wonderful. And I love that. And I've definitely needed that in my life. But also, like, on the flip side with Funding Love, like, I spent 4 days literally giggling like a little kid. Like, and those those connections and those stories all came out naturally. But like, it really was truly the connection and like the unspoken bond that like made that trip what I needed it to be at that time.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, having fun together builds bonds. There's no question about it. Like, that is, I love that. I mean,
and that was the goal amazing. Too, because we say around Funding Love all the time that bonds are built best when people are having fun. We just wanted it to be like an environment where it wasn't forced. Like, this is an environment where it's going to happen organically and naturally because you're having fun, not because it's like, all right, Shonda, your turn. Tell us your story, Right. And so it's really like on this side of it, because me and Caitlin went into this just like kind of like two dumb adoptive moms ourselves on this side of it 3 trips in to see like, okay, it actually works. Like our crazy harebrained idea of like, no, like just send them to Disney World. It actually works.
Get them in a room.
So, and I'm like, so appreciative of you sharing that, because it affirms that we should keep doing what we're doing.
I mean, like I said, that community, that connection is already there, but then having fun and building that connection even further, like, just makes it even better. It strengthens that without even like having to take the time to be like, okay, so this is my adoption story and I was this old and blah blah blah, and let's talk about my trauma. So yeah.
Well, good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that makes me smile. I'm sitting here, nobody can see my face, but I'm just smiling as you're telling me that story, so that's great. Going back to the trip, to the Funding Love birth mom trip, what was now that we're removed a little bit, what was your biggest takeaway from that time?
I mean, I think honestly, I know we've talked about it, but just community in general, and also getting to appreciate where everybody was on that trip. I mean, we had a couple birth moms that had never actually met another birth mom, and I just remember like fresh post-placement and like not connecting with anybody yet. Like, I know both of those girls were like farther into their adoption stories, but like not having that community, it's just mind-blowing to me. Like, I've always built a community with other birth moms and other people, and the fact that there was other girls on that trip that hadn't connected with other birth moms was just like so life-changing to me, and just was so cool to see that like they actually really truly built their community at that trip.
Yeah, I mean, it does break my heart to think that some of these women, they've lived in like this lonely place with this for so long. But then, it also warms my heart to know that they found that, but I do know that there are still so many women out there who have these stories that they are just have in them. And I just, my heart breaks for them because of that lonely feeling. And we do, hope that like you sharing your story and all of the women on this vacation, like we said to you guys when you were there on the first night, like every time you tell a story, just by being in that room, by attending the Funding Love Birth Mom vacation, you are inspiring other birth moms to hopefully say like, okay, it's okay to share my story. It is okay to let people know I'm a birth mom, or to find another birth mom, or to step out and have that first ounce of courage to seek somebody else out. I mean, that is why we have these conversations. That is why we're so grateful you're on this podcast, because it does break my heart to remember those women on our trip this year who that for the first time in a decade are meeting another birth mom, and to carry that with you for a decade. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I would go back and carry that burden with her all those years if I could,
I mean, like you said, that's why I'm such a big believer in, I take every chance that I can get to talk about adoption.
It's
I mean, even if it's not somebody that I know, like, has anything to do with adoption, I guarantee that person probably knows somebody that's been touched by adoption too. And I mean, we've seen adoption change so much over the last 10 years that it's just, we have to keep it going.
Yes.
We have to keep the conversation going.
Yes, and I think that it's super important for those outside of adoption to actually talk about and hear about adoption, because I think that is where a lot of the stigmas continue to be perpetuated and to live and thrive, because they don't know about it. I feel like, being educated, like we said, within the adoption community, that's gone so far, and I'm so grateful for that. But now we need to let those that are outside the adoption bubble, in a sense, that think, oh, well, I don't really need to listen to that podcast. I don't really need to follow that nonprofit. I don't need to listen to that because I'm not associated with that. No, you do, because you still need to know how to interact with these people that you might come across in everyday life, or you still need to be aware of what's going on in the world. You need to be aware of, adoption laws that need to be changed, or vulnerable communities, or children and teens that are sitting on couches tonight whose parental rights have been terminated and need a home. So for me, I'm like, we have to reach outside of the bubble and bring people in, and kind of break down that wall of being like, well, I don't really need to hear about that because I'm not connected to the adoption
It doesn't
community.
affect me. Yeah.
Correct.
But it does. Whether that person shares their story or not, or how adoption is related to their life, those are the people that need to know.
Yes.
And it's going to go much further if we just continue this conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody is connected, and they don't even, I really believe that everybody is connected to somebody in the adoption community a lot closer than they think. A coworker of yours, a cousin of yours, whatever it is, your brother-in-law's sister, whatever. There are so many people who I feel like are so much closer than they think. And Mal, you hit, 100%.
And it's just not something that you're ever going to, I'm sure that even though you are very open with your story, when you get a new job or you're walking around the grocery store, you're not like, hi, I'm Shonda, I'm an adoptee, or hi, I'm Shonda, I'm a birth. Like, it's not something that is something you can't see visibly on a person. And so many people are probably, like you say, so closely related to someone in the adoption community and just don't know, because it's just kind of awkward to walk up and be like, hi, I'm Mallory, an adoptive mom. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Somebody's going to be like, okay, why?
Exactly.
That's so great. Maybe we should all walk around with name tags.
Yeah.
And like a few key points about us. Maybe we should.
3 fun facts about me.
Yeah. They'll break down walls. Yeah. Maybe they should put that. Oh, that's so great. I'm curious what you'd say. I'm going to ask you this from a birth mom and an adoptee perspective, but if you could say one thing to a birth mom, let's take this, who maybe has never met another birth mom, or maybe she's just like struggling right now to find that courage to jump into community, or feels alone right now. What can you say to her to encourage her right now?
I would just say that that she deserves to have the space that she takes up, whether that's wanting to talk about her feelings and find connection with birth moms, or if she just needs to listen to other birth mom perspectives and not even share her story or whatever. Just know that you deserve to take up the space that where you're at.
I love that.
I think is the biggest takeaway.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
She deserves a seat at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I love that.
Because I know it's really hard, like you said, to take that. It's a huge, huge step to reach out. I mean, like we've said, other birth moms, I mean, there's like this unspoken bond, but like that doesn't mean that it makes it any easier to reach out and be vulnerable to someone else. And I mean, I definitely know other birth moms that have like sat and listened to other birth mom perspectives before they've even reached out. And that is totally fine. It's totally fine to go your own space and your own way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of like what we were saying with the Funding Love trips and with women that do speak out and share their stories. There are people listening out there, and you're empowering them and making them brave to be able to speak out and share their own story. So if you are still in that period where you're kind of like, no, I'm going to sit back and listen, that's okay. That's okay. Take your time, but there is still a place for your voice. There's a place for your story, and there is always a seat for you at the Funding Love table. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So true. Now, if you could say something to maybe an adoptee who is in this place that might be feeling like they're struggling to find their place, their identity, or just understanding their story and grasping and being okay with their story, what could you say to them to encourage them?
I would say probably just that, again, it's just okay to sit with your own feelings. I mean, adoption is so complicated. It's built on loss, and, you know, it comes from a broken place. Like, yeah, we're building up families with adoption, but it starts with a loss. And as the adoptee, you never really actually got a choice in the matter. Nobody asked you to be adopted, or, you know, to be not connected with your first family in some sort or a way or another. And I think it's just, again, I mean, finding a community or being validated in some way that it's okay if you're angry, it's okay if you're sad, it's okay if you feel great that you're adopted. I mean, we all have different experiences and different feelings, and it's totally fine to be where you are.
Love that.
That is so encouraging that you don't, just because somebody else might be angry and you feel okay, that doesn't mean that you haven't processed the right way, or doesn't mean that you're right. That is so true. It's okay to process anything you're feeling. Gosh, Shonda, thank you so much. Honestly, all of your wise words and your encouraging words and your vulnerabilities and sharing your stories. We're so grateful for that, truly. And we're so grateful to know you.
Yeah. I'm so grateful to know you two guys too.
Yay. So before we totally wrap up, at the Funding Love podcast, we'd like to end all of our episodes with a little bit of extra love. So what is one thing, Shonda, that you are loving right now?
Honestly, my latest obsession, I just got into watching Suits, the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One of my friends recommended it, and it's been my boyfriend and I's favorite show. We've been watched like 6 episodes every night. So,
oh my gosh, you are not the first person. Literally in the last week, 2 people have told me the same thing about that show, and it's not a new show.
No, it's not.
I know it's not a new show. I think it just came to Netflix. Or
I
something,
think so.
Like everybody's Oh my gosh, no, I'm gonna go check that out.
Yeah,
definitely. Awesome. Well, I love that. We love you. We're so grateful for you. And we can't wait to see you again, hopefully soon.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Shonda. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to this episode of the Funding Love Podcast. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Funding Love Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we would love it if you would help others to find us too. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts app, give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you are listening on Spotify or YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you will never miss an episode. If you decide to share our podcast, be sure to tag us on Instagram or Facebook to let us know. And just a reminder before we go, tickets to our Garden Gala, which will be held on April 26th, 2024 at the Four Seasons Resort in Orlando, are on sale now. Garden Gala getaway packages are already selling fast and are extremely limited. So if you want to stay in the magic with your ticket package that includes one night at the Four Seasons Resort, be sure to grab that package today. Otherwise, grab your ticket or your table of 10 by visiting fundinglove.com/gala. We can't wait to see you there. When you attend our gala, donate online, shop our merchandise, or listen to our podcast, you are funding love.